Hi, we're just going to start, and we are going to record this and send you the recording after the meeting. So if you want to take notes, go ahead. Otherwise, you'll have the recording. So today we are going to talk about list processing in Workato. It's an important, very important feature in Workato. I think it's one of the most important features that people use when they're building recipes. So this is part of the Workato product hour. Last week or 2 weeks back, we did a session on lookup tables. And if you want to get details of that, just contact us. And this week we are going to do this list processing, and next week we do advanced list processing. And following that, we are doing files and attachments, which is dealing with the different types of storages, Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, etc., and how to deal with attachments, how to deal with CSV files that are stored in this storages, and how to write to the storages, how to write to an FTP site, how to write to a Dropbox or a Box, or open Google Drive and such. And then the following week, or the 2 weeks after that, we will be doing DevOps recipes. So this is, in many of the technology companies, especially, or many companies, the DevOps groups have certain types of recipes that they use, and we have found in our user base there are quite a few people who are using it in very interesting ways. So we just wanted to bring that to all of you. And if you wanted to sign up for the future sessions, you can just use that link before and go there. So we will spend most, although this says list overview 15 minutes, use cases 30 minutes, we will use most of the session to not talk about, we're going to not talk about the list, but actually show you what it is, and then keep enough time for Q&A and such. So, if you are already using Workato, you know that there are many places that you can get lists. When you do a search, it creates a list. When you do a get a list or a list, you can do a get a list. Get related objects in Salesforce will give you a list. When you are reading CSV files or getting lines out of CSV files, it gives you a list. Salesforce SOQL query gives you a list. If you're using HTTP, and most of the times I've seen that most of the HTTP requests in return, in response to the request, they will return a list. So that's another one that we're going to cover next time, HTTP requests and how to process lists from there. So lists can come from outside. Most of the times you create lists from outside, and there's also instances where you can create a list inside, and we'll go through that. So, and all of these lists, once they appear inside the recipe, they are now available for processing in other steps. So so on step 1 or in the trigger, you may get a list, and then later on you may have to process this list one by one. Examples are order lines for order, or opportunities and products. Donations as part of a badge, those are all lists that you process. So if you go into the Workato recipe itself, you see that there is if you see on this side, you see there is this 4 lines. Some people call it a pancake stack or a hamburger. So whenever you see this thing, you know that it's the data type is a list. So here it is a get related opportunity products, and it returns a list of products. And each list, as we go into it, we'll show you that the list has a size, which is the total number of items in that list. And when you are processing one by one, we know which index is being processed at that point. And then there is the repeat action, which is going to be used to loop through a list and process things. Or you can take an entire list and give that as an input in some cases. We'll go through examples of that. All right, so and then there are other things like list application versus lookup tables. I'll cover a little bit of that. I had mentioned it last time, but today also we'll cover a little bit of that, and how and when to use a list versus a lookup tables. Again, I'll cover a little bit of that. So let's get into the actual product now. Before I start, I just wanted to, you probably are familiar with it, but I just wanted to bring up certain points. So we have, we have the support site, support.workato.com, and inside that you can go to solutions and you can find questions that have already been answered here. So you can just search, or you can look through these categories and find your answer there. We also have forums, and we are trying to popularize this even more, because in this area we can answer questions. You can ask questions, we can answer questions, someone else can answer a question. So we want to really make this a really happening place, and we need your cooperation in this area also. So if you find that there's a question that you can answer, go ahead and answer it. Otherwise, there are various areas here. There's Q&A, there's ideas and new updates. And even inside the Q&A, there are different topics that are there. So people have started using this, and if you find that you have a question to ask and it's not urgent, then you can put it here, and other people can benefit from the questions you ask and the responses that they get here. And if you have new ideas, you can put it here. Also, two other sites that are useful. So this is the forum. I was just showing, and two other sites. One is this docs.workato.com. This is a very useful site. It's got this is something that we have done recently, but a lot of work has gone into this, and we just want to make sure that you benefit from whatever we have written up. So it covers introduction, concepts, etc., and then data mapping, running recipes, building recipes. There are many things here. And if you don't find anything, like say list formulas, if you go to the bottom, if you have a question and you don't find it, you can ask the community, file a support ticket, search our resource library, and that's the. And as we get good questions and we answer them, we'll also put it here. But also, we'd like to put it in the community forum. Another site which is interesting, and this is also something new, a product.workato. So the other one was docs.workato.com. Workato.com here, and this is product.workato.com, where there's a we just started it this whole thing, the product session recently, and you can see older things here. This is the one on list, and then if you go below, where I think I expanded it, but if you go back, I think you'll be able to find the older sessions there too. So here you can see, this is the one we did last time. So with that, let me get into list processing and the recipe. Well, I pre-built a recipe just to show and ran a few jobs just to show how everything works. So this is the recipe page that you're familiar with, and here's a trigger. And in the trigger, we are saying new opportunity in Salesforce, and if the Salesforce new object stage equals closed one, right? So you are all familiar with that. And this is always going to return one item from Salesforce. And you can see here, it's very familiar, Salesforce new object, opportunity, get it from yesterday, and trigger if stage equals closed one. And here I have put the link to the today's product session. You can go take a look at it here. I've also added it here in this description section, and this is one of them, and this is the list formulas from the docs. So those are there. I have also made the recipe a public recipe, and the number is 510536. So if you want to, you can copy it and take a look at it. So now going back to the recipe, this is Salesforce new object and from yesterday, and then we go and get the list of products that are associated with this opportunity. So we are looking up Salesforce get related object list, opportunity product, and opportunity ID is the one that I'm filling in. So now what you get, if you come here, you say that from that get related opportunity product list, you're getting this list of products that satisfy this condition, which is anything that has this opportunity ID as the parent. And all the fields are available here. And if you go to the bottom, you can see a size here. But we are not doing anything yet, so you don't. So if I put my trigger there, you see all of this information coming in. And then I can do. So what I do is I do an if condition, and I'm saying if size equals 0. So we showed you the size before. So if this size is 0, then I will. So I move that size here. And it says if the size is 0, then I will search for, oh, okay, I missed a step here. So I was in this, the first thing I did here is the for each item after I get the opportunity product. And here you can see that you see the list of opportunity products here, and I'm going to use that opportunity product as my source list. So once that happens, I'm now looping through all the opportunity products. I'm doing a search in QuickBooks, and here you can see it's a normal search. But what I've done here is so a little bit of a G-sub. So what I'm doing is QuickBooks, it doesn't like this colons. So I'm just replacing it with spaces. That's why I have this thing here. And so if I don't find that, so here again, I'm looking at the size equals 0. I talked about that before. So I'm saying that if the search did not return anything, if the size equals 0, then I want to do something, right? Now you could normally when we do this kind of a thing, we also use a different kind of comparison. So I will say if name is not present, do this. And when we are doing name equals is not present, what we are saying is that whenever we make the query in that way, it always gets the name from the first item in that list. So that's why most of the you will see it working all the time. But I just wanted to put this formula here, like size equals 0, to show that you can use the list size to take action. And then, so what I'm saying here is I could not find this opportunity product in QuickBooks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a default QBO item name and see if that is existing. So how did I get this default QuickBooks item name? So if I click here, you'll see that its properties is lighting up. And here you can see that the config parameters has default QBO item name. This is another thing that you may or may not be aware of. So what I've done here for this recipe, I've created configuration parameters, and I've created one called default QBO item name, and I've given the value of sales here. So I expect this to be there. So anytime I find a QuickBooks, in the logic here is that if my product doesn't exist in QuickBooks, then I'm going to use the default product and build my recipe that way. And then is the most interesting part of this thing is I create a list. So the application is of type list, and I say append item to list, and I'm saying here that the name of the list is product names, and here I'm saying if the ID equals this or the ID. So here what I'm doing, I'm using a formula, and I'm saying the search from the first search that I did based on the opportunity product, if it did not give me back anything, then I'll use the search from the default lookup, right? So you can see here that I've put a comment here. So whenever you put a pound sign and say something, it's used as a comment. This is a good way of, if you have complex formulas, it's a good way of documenting that formula. So I'm saying use the one from the first search or the second search, right? So that's one. Now the second thing here, so now you see that I'm using the quantity and the for each is showing up, right? So this one is coming from the quantity field here. This one here, you see that both of them light up. Now, when you're inside a loop, most often you have to, most of the times you have to map the data that you're using inside the loop from this for each area. If I had, instead of doing this, if I had done something like this here, this was also, it looks like a list. So you may think, and many people actually do this, they may think that I should get it from this get opportunity product list search, but we are not looping on this one right now. We are looping on the, the for each, right? So although you're looping on this product list, you're actually fetching the data from the for each group. So if I map this quantity into here, like I have this quantity, let's say I map, if I use this one here, it will always get, so if I do this, it is always going to get only the first, the quantity for the first the product that was returned, right? So that's a very, very common mistake. I think I was talking to 2 people yesterday who had this problem. So make sure that whenever you're mapping it from in here, from inside the for each, right? And same thing here, you can see the list price is coming from the for each. So whenever you're here, you should be looking for the for each. So for each, and opportunity product name is also for each, right? And here what I've done, opportunity product name, I've used a formula, and I'm saying, again, do a global search. You remember that thing that, QuickBooks doesn't like colons, especially when you're going through the API. I think if you enter it through the, if you enter it on the form, it'll take it, but it doesn't, the API doesn't take it. So I just put a comment here, QuickBooks doesn't like this. And then the third one I have put, another field I have put here is the sequence. So is it the number 1, number 2, number 3? And here what I've done is index +1. Again, I'm using a formula because whenever you're looking at an index, it will start from 0. So what I've done is index +1 to start not from 0, but from 1.
Hey, Amnon.
Yeah.
We have a question about the recipe, so I'm just unmuting a participant.
Yeah.
So the question was, how do I add this field as a default product ID?
Oh, okay. So the parameter field, right? You have to, right now there's no clear thing. What I do is Control-Shift-P. So this opens up, and you can do a show example to see, what the different types are, right? And so that's how we do. So Control-Shift-P is the way to kind of do it. And if I do Control-Shift-P again, it'll take it away. Now, here I'm using configuration parameters, right? Another way of doing the same thing is to define it in your properties. You can say, my default. If that is true across all recipes in your account, then you should put it as an account parameter. If it is only for this recipe, then it is better to put it in the way I have done it here at the bottom. Okay, so where were we? So we are on this append item. So what it is doing, you can see that it is actually inside this for loop. So all of these lines are inside the for loop. And so every time it comes here, it is going to append one item to this product name. So, so it has created a temporary list, which is going to be called product names. It is going to have these fields. If I want to add more fields, I can add a new field, and it'll show me. I can give it a. I don't want to do it because it's not going to make the recipe run, but you can add it like that, and then change your fields, or you can you can change the name, you can change add new ones, and so on. So once you have created the list, I just want to go to the next step and show you that on the right side, you'll see that list has come up. And these are the fields that I had defined as part of it.
There's one question. One was, is there a limit on the number of rows that are returned?
On the, from a search?
Yes. Or in the processing of a list in general?
In list process, lists don't have any limitation as such, but certain products, and for certain actions, there's a limitation. So for example, sometimes, depending on how you're processing it, if you are reading a file as a trigger, there's no limitation. But if you're doing a read file inside, Sometimes I think it limits it to 1,000 lines or something. So if you have any specific questions about a particular issue that you have, then just contact us and we'll guide you through that. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is that the list shows up, the one we defined shows up here, and it is also available for future processing. For example, in this what I'm doing here is a log message using utilities, and I'm looking up sales terms. So so let me go to that page and show you. I don't think I have. Okay, so this is so I've created a lookup table called sales terms, and I have two fields: SFDC lead source and QBO sales term. And what I'm doing here, last time I showed you, we talked a lot about lookup tables and such. I'm showing you here how you can do lookup directly from the formula. So I'm saying lookup sales terms. You can see the details here. So I'm saying the lookup table is called sales terms. The source field is SFDC lead source, and this lead source is coming from the opportunity, the new opportunity. And the field I want out of the lookup table is QBO sales term, right? So that's how it works. So you can, you don't have to do a search lookup table and so on. I have an example down below where I talk about that a little bit more. So I've also, if you're going down this on the right side, I have documented the, in more detail than I usually do. So I talk about this one as a common error. Item with same name does not exist in QBO. Get item in QBO is in default term. So in English, I've tried to write down. So what I was going to say is that, here what we are doing, the reason I'm doing this is that in Salesforce, there is no concept of a sales term, but inside of QuickBooks, you have a QBO sales term when you're creating an invoice. Also, the names don't exactly match. So, for example, here, I'm showing you, if it's a lead source, if it came from trade show, then give it a net 30 term. Something like that you could do. And then if you go down to the next step, here is another way of doing the same thing, right? So I could have done lookup table, search entries, sales terms, lead source, and so on. So this is the thing that we saw last time. Now, after that, I want to go to this one. So when I was testing, I did not want to change QuickBooks, so I put a stop job here. But what I'm doing is, before I create the order in QuickBooks, I am going to get the customer with using the name, and I will find the customer ID from it. And the reason for that is, the create invoice takes a customer ID, it doesn't take a customer name. So here you can see I'm putting in the customer ID. So that's the reason I have to fetch this thing. Same reason why we went through all the products and searched for the product in QuickBooks, and if it was not present, do the other way. All of that was done to match, we are assuming here that the names are the same in both systems, but the IDs are different. And again, when we are creating the ID here, the create customer, it needs an ID, right? So I have to get the item ID, and that's why I was going through in that loop. I was going through in this loop here for each item, finding the matching QBO item, and putting it into the temporary list, which I'll be using here. So you can see in the beginning, there is the customer ID, there is the lookup sales terms, the same thing I showed you before. So I have put it directly here, the lookup. And then here, I'm pointing to the list I created, right? So sales line item takes what is called a array input. So here you can see that it's, line item 6 here is lighting up, right? So, and the reason is, I'm using this thing here, the items. So I'm saying use this list as an input to this order, to this invoice. And then below that, I'm mapping the fields for the item, right? So items, then product name I got from the list. You can see it came from the list here. Then amount I did not fill. Then QuickBooks product ID I'm getting from here. And then unit price I'm getting from here, right? Quantity and so on. So that's that's how we'll create. So this is a good example of where the input it requires is a list, and you have to point to a different any of the lists. You could point to a for each loop, or not a for each loop. If you're doing it without the list, you should actually point it to this one here. And I can explain some of that, not here. You should point it to this thing here, right? If it was, if you did not go through the list processing and the product IDs matched and so on. So, so that's how you input it. And then I wanted to show you a couple of more things. I think you can use some formulas on lists to display it in a string, as a string. So here I'm saying, there is a list called items, and I want to do what is called a format map, and I want to get this name out of it, product name out of it, and then I want to join it using a comma. So I'll show you how that looks as an example. Let's go to the So here are the jobs. Let's look at this job. So this is the other part of it. You have defined the list and you've dealt with lists. Now you see how the job history looks, right? So here, you usually get one item because it's a trigger. Then I get related opportunity products, and here I will see a plus sign. That means there are multiple ones of these. So here in this particular case, there are 3 of them, and then I go into the for each. Now the for each doesn't really have any output, it's a size 3, and it shows you the same things there as you saw before. But the interesting part is here, the search item. So now I got the input from this search, and then I have an output, and I see that nothing was returned. So then I said, if the size equals 0, I will use the default product. So I came here, and the default product was sales. So I got the items, and it got the sales from there, right? After that, I am adding it to the product name. So when, because this is something which is happening in the loop multiple times, if I go to output, you will see the result after all the things I've gone through, and you can see this is the list I created, the temporary list that I created. And then I did a search tables lookup. Now, here also you see that there's a plus which shows up, right? Because it doesn't know if it's going to be, any search typically has the potential to return more than one list, one item. So it always shows up as a plus, and you'll see this thing here. And then I did the log message. So it said net 30, and then this is the message where I put together the inputs from the list, and you see that the first product, comma, second product, and third product. So that's how the thing looks. Okay, so now we can take questions.
Okay, so let's start from the start. So Rins is asking, I sometimes find that the list is not shown as list for each item list input field.
Is not a, so it depends. I think if the input takes a list, you'll see the list appear. If you're at a different place, it may not show up as a list. So again, Rins, we can look at your specific example. Give us a call. We'll find out what's going on. But it should always show up, But if the input doesn't take a list, then you cannot choose a list.
The other question, Ashni is asking, sorry, so I think he missed the starting part. So when you said QBO size 0 trigger, does it mean that the product doesn't exist in QBO?
This one here, it means that when I looked for the product in QBO using the name that came from Salesforce, if it did not exist, then the number of items returned for that search will be 0 because there are 0 items returned. That's why we are doing this search.
Okay. And then we had another question by Reens. How do I add this field for setting this default product ID?
Just by typing in here. And if I save this, that default gets saved.
Okay. So Eduardo is asking whether this webinar is recorded. So yes, this webinar is recorded, and we will send it over after the end of the webinar. And then, so there's another question by Reens. This formula to search lookup, is this the same action as the search lookup?
I think I put it here, right?
I'm pointing to
this one here?
Sales term ID formula.
Yeah, so this one here. So this is you just go into formula mode, you say lookup, and then you give the name of the table, the field name, and what is the input for this lookup. So you pull in a value here, and then you say, what am I getting back? Okay,
I think his question would be like, how is this different from the action search?
Oh, you're not going through that extra step. No, so the reason, this is a very, very interesting question, right? So if I am doing something like this, where I'm actually in this particular case, I could have taken this whole thing from a separate step. So I just avoided a step, and I put this is like a shortcut for the lookup, followed by a map. So you're avoiding that was the whole purpose of this thing here I was showing. Let me just show. I was saying that you could have done something like this: search entries, lookup, and then in the next step you use the value from there, like I've done here. So he's taking from the display field, append to item in list. So instead of that, I did it, where was that? Which one was it? Oh, here. Oh, this is the other one. Message to output. This one here. So I was just showing that you can instead of doing the other one, you can do this. So if you go up here, lookup table retrieval using formula, that's what we're trying to do. The other way of doing it is to search the lookup table and get the value out.
Okay, great. Yeah. Raghu is asking, in this case, will the recipe create multiple invoice line items if products have more than one?
See, here the input was a list, so it will create an order. So, and this thing here, if you look at it, the create invoice, it is taking this sales line, which is a list, is a sales line source list, and I'm the whole idea of building this temporary list was to pass all the items as an array. So here I'm moving this list in from here, this value from the list. You can say 6 list append items to list from that structure I'm getting. So it will create an invoice with multiple line items.
Okay.
So I think going back to Raghu's question, the reason he is asking that, in the past, before we had list, we used to do a different pattern. We used to say, create the invoice header and then add the line items to it. So you don't need to do that pattern because of this. There are certain advantages of doing it this way versus the other. In the other case, let's say that you have 10 line items and you, for some reason, your recipe failed after 5 line items. So you could potentially get faulty invoice, right? In this case, the way we are doing it here, the whole invoice will fail or the whole invoice will succeed. So that's the advantage.
Okay. So Scott is asking, can you elaborate on what the configuration function is and how to create a configuration?
This one. So this is Control-Shift-P, and it'll open this up. This is something that we normally don't give to people. It's available, but no one knows about it. And if you want to see how to fill the values, you can see this hide example and show example.
Yeah, I think a lot of people is asking about this. So to repeat, it's Control, Shift, and P.
Control, Shift, P. And Control, Shift, P to hide it again.
Yeah.
Now you want to use this only if you're building recipes which have configurable parameters. Otherwise, you don't need.
Okay. So there's another question about, is there a training or like a session plan on formulas?
Yes. So that we'll cover a whole bunch of things in the next session for the list processing formulas. But we do have. It's a huge topic. Formulas is a huge topic. I can take you to this document if you're very interested. This one here. So this is the docs.workato.com, and if you go to this area, data mapping formulas, string formulas, number formulas, date formulas, list formulas. So there may be some that are missing. It's possible. We are always adding new formulas, but all the ones we know are here. So this is all string formulas. I know we'll cover a whole bunch of these guys next time. List formulas. Okay.
So there's another question about, does it depend on the SDK setup for about the list show up?
Well, in SDK, you're defining what kind of structure you're getting in or out. So in SDK, if you are presenting back a list, then you should represent it as a list in the SDK. And some of those things I think we'll cover later on in the next session, because those are more advanced topics. Any other questions?
How do you get the default to show up so you can use it? Is it only for certain applications or anything Workato has API access to?
You mean this is the one, right? Default name. So this is, I built it. Meaning I said I want to have a field called default QBO item name. It'll be called QBO item name. Here's going to be the hint. So that's what it is. There's no magic to it. And once you do that, it shows up here. You can fill in the value, and then anywhere in the recipe you can actually see the default field. If you go under properties, you will see there are two types of properties: the config properties, which is this default QBO item, the one we defined, and here are the account properties. We have talked about this before. The account properties is a new thing. You can define field value pairs that are, they don't change much, and that are used by most of your recipes. Those are the account level properties.
Okay. So if the action step number 3 does not return any results, the actions 4 to 6 will not be executed?
Actions, if action 3 doesn't return anything, action 4 and 5 will not be. 6 will happen. 6 is outside of the if condition, so 6 will happen regardless. And the reason I think I showed you this one here before, but I'm saying use from the first search or the second search. If you remember, the first search was using the input from Salesforce. The second search was using the input from my default QBO item name. Any other questions?
Okay, so the other question, so we did the configuration, right? The Control-Shift-P thing.
Control, yeah.
Yeah, is there a solution that you can do it without the keyboard shortcut?
Not right now.
Okay.
No, right now there is no.
Okay. And then is it just a Mac thing, or how about Windows?
I know of people who have used it on Windows. I don't know. I don't have a Windows, so I cannot tell you for sure. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work, I think there is another way of doing it. But yeah, I'm not sure of the question. What the real answer is on that one.
Is there free training to become expert on the product quickly with all the features in a bootcamp session?
We have done custom training sessions, but we have not done any for a set of, like I can do a training session in an hour, in a day, or in 3 days, depending on the needs of the people. But yeah, we are actually thinking of, we have, actually Zan is looking at how to create certification programs and such. So yeah, we will roll out something, and along with the certification program, a prerequisite will be a training program. So we will be doing that, but we don't have it today.
Okay, so this is not a question, but like a tip that Nina is sharing. So something that she found when dealing with lists. So you can also include an action with error monitor step inside your repeat action, so that you use to build 2 lists at once for successes and errors. Then you can output those lists to a CSV file after completing the repeat action, and alert you to the errors. So this keeps your repeat action from causing any entire transaction/job from failing because of a single bad record.
That's a very good point, because if there's a failure that you did not anticipate, if you wrap it with a try-catch loop, and then in the success portion you put in the success list, and in the failures you put in the failures list. That's actually a very good point, and it will keep this recipe from not crashing.
Yeah, thanks Nina for sharing that. So another question from Nick. Can this be used to separate line items from a header in a CSV file?
It depends. We have no way of knowing which one is a header line and which is a CSV, regular line. You could, in your logic, say that the first line is always going to be a header line, and the following lines are going to be, child lines.
Okay, so Ty is saying that Control-Shift-P does a print screen on PC. So let us check on that.
Yeah, let's. I think maybe it is a different sequence that we have to do.
Yeah. Okay, so what we really would like is to get triggers to multiple connections.
Thank you. I think if someone can put, if you're, you can go to the forums and add more details to what that means.
Okay, so here's a simple example here. So if you run 10 Shopify, you have to run 10 exactly the same Shopify recipes.
Ah, okay. Yes, you have to right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think, yeah, it's, whatever way you look at it, it'll be 10 different connections. So, yeah, I don't know if you have a way of. Let me ask the engineers also, if they have a way of doing it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's all for questions.
I think we are good to go.
Yeah, I think we are good. So if you have any other questions, feel free to drop
And is there any survey or anything?
Oh yes. So thank you so much for your attention so far. So let's go into the survey section. Let's do this. So how did you find, what did you find the most useful in this product hour? Okay, so yeah, so looks like the most people want to learn more about Workato, using Workato in general, and then followed by some possible use cases for each feature. Thank you so much for the answers. So we'll feed back to the product team, and with that, I think we are good. So there's no more questions, and we'll just end this session early, so you guys can enjoy the last 10 minutes. So thank you so much for attending. Have a good day. Bye.
Ooh.